I'm going to challenge you and push back a little bit and say, even if they had won, people would have still crashed out. Because
unless it was like a total beatdown. That is the only thing that would have.
No, I'm telling you, it wouldn't matter.
Really, if they won.
I mean, because what we're dealing
Caitlin
with
didn't play well.
Yeah, it doesn't.
That right there is the moment the conversation broke open. Two analysts who watched the same Indiana Fever game, who tracked every possession, and one of them is saying something the other can't quite accept. Even a win wouldn't have stopped it. The meltdown was always coming. And once you understand why, you can't unsee it.
But like,
yeah,
when Caitlin's on the court, you feel it.
Right, yeah. So, did you anticipate, and this is not just X's and O's part, but in general, knowing how people are, did you anticipate a crash out? I did, because y'all need Jesus.
This is 6 days after the Fever lost their season opener to the Dallas Wings. The final score was Dallas 107, Indiana 104. A loss, yes, but a shootout. A high-scoring track meet. The kind of game where you'd expect the conversation to be about pace and offensive firepower. Instead, the conversation turned into something else entirely, a crash out. And the question being asked here is whether anyone saw it coming.
I would say inexplicably, but I got the explanation.
Yeah, I will say that the answer is yes, but not to the extent that we're seeing. Especially if Indiana had lost the game, which obviously we did, there was going to be a crash out no matter what, because Dallas was so bad last year. It is completely irrelevant how good Dallas is this year. They are excellent. They are an elite offensive team. They are really, really good, and they are going to more than double their win total this year. But it doesn't matter.
Here's the part that gets lost in the noise. Dallas isn't the Dallas of last year. Last season, the Wings won just 10 games. Paige Bueckers and Erike Ogunbowale were on the roster, but the chemistry wasn't there. This year, they're projected to more than double that win total. They're an elite offensive team. So losing a season opener to them, especially a one-possession shootout, is not the catastrophe it's being treated as. Unless the loss isn't really the point.
As a team. So the idea of Caitlin Clark losing to Paige specifically, that kind of rivalry that people have built up in their heads and have spent a year online defending the idea that Caitlin is better than Paige, and then suddenly suddenly Paige beats Caitlin. Like, yes, that is going to cause crash outs. But
some of it is pride from the people crashing out because they said X, Y, and Z, and they're worried about saving face.
And this is where the story turns from basketball into something messier. For a full year, a chunk of online fans built an entire identity around the idea that Caitlin Clark is better than Paige Bueckers. They argued it in comment sections, on X, on every podcast thread you can imagine. Then Paige walked into Indianapolis and outplayed Caitlin in the opener. The basketball outcome ran straight into the parasocial investment. And the people who'd staked their reputations on that take had a choice to make. Admit it, or burn the building down.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of pent-up energy and anger with the Fever front office, and there's a lot of people that are not happy with the moves that they made in the offseason, and a lot of people that think that they haven't done enough to surround Caitlin with a good enough roster to win. So it was inevitable that if we lost this game, it's the ultimate, like, I told you so.
It's validation.
It didn't really matter how it looked. It didn't really matter if we should have won or we should have lost. Just the fact, like, there's people are coming in with so much of this, like, it's not good enough.
Now you're hearing the second pressure point, the Fever front office. There's a faction of the fan base that has been openly angry at general manager Amber Cox and head coach Stephanie White since the offseason moves were announced. They believe the roster around Caitlin isn't good enough. They believe the coaching staff isn't elite enough. So when that first game went sideways, it wasn't analyzed, it was used. The loss became evidence in a case that was already written before tip-off.
So when it doesn't look good enough, it's like, see, I told you so. This is why we need to get rid of Steph White and Amber and everyone, and they haven't given her enough help. And it's not really based in any sort of actual, like, rational reality. It's like, you know, it's like it's kind of funny too, because like a lot of these people, a lot of them are like Caitlin Clark, let's say stands, like they're really just here for Caitlin.
Right.
And in one light, they'll be like, she only played a quarter well. And then but then they'll also say like, it's Steph White's fault. And it's like, well, you have to pick one. We didn't play well enough to win.
Pay attention to the contradiction being identified here, because it's the tell. The same accounts will say Caitlin played poorly. Then in the next breath, they'll say nothing was her fault. They want both. They want her elite performance protected as untouchable. And they want her team's failure blamed entirely on the people around her. That can't logically coexist. If the offense ran fine, the loss is on the defense. If the offense didn't run, the personnel argument falls apart. Pick one. They won't.
Play well.
Yeah, it doesn't. They don't even want them to play well. I mean, this is what I'm saying. I'll just be real. They don't want them to play well because it kills the narrative. It kills the agenda. So even if they played well, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting that even if the Fever wins, you would still get what you're seeing all over social media since yesterday?
This is the line that should stop you. They don't want the team to play well. Read that again. Because if you accept that as true, every other piece of the puzzle clicks into place. The Fever beat the Los Angeles Sparks the very next game. Then on Sunday, they beat the Seattle Storm. 2 consecutive wins after the Dallas loss. And yet the discourse hasn't softened. The criticism of Stephanie White hasn't quieted. The shots at the front office haven't stopped. Because winning in this ecosystem doesn't reset anything. The narrative was the product, not the result.
Some of this is just too easy to predict, unfortunately. And I don't know how, with any knowledge of the game, you can watch the game and say things need to be better. That's obviously true. But to just say, to come away from that and then say, it's Stephanie White, I mean, I'm like, are you watching the same game I'm watching? They're not setting any screens. Now, screening could be better, but we didn't lose because of offense.
Right.
So I think there's a certain group, it doesn't matter what happens.
And here's where the actual basketball analysis gets buried. The criticism that Stephanie White is the problem ignores what happened on the floor. The Fever didn't lose Game 1 because of offensive scheme. They scored 104 points. They lost because of defense, because Dallas put up 107. That's a defensive problem. That's a personnel adjustment, a rotation question, a switching scheme issue. But the people loudest about firing the coach aren't talking about any of that. They're not breaking down screens or pick and roll coverage. They're just yelling a name.
They are going to crash out because that's what they do. And that's why I go, I don't know how you guys do it on social media, because you have so much more patience than I do to engage with some stuff, which are legitimate concerns, but other things, the loudest of the loud, just it blows my mind. And anyway, once again, I encourage you to watch the entire live stream. I will put the link in the description of this video.
What you just heard is the cost. Real basketball minds, the people who could actually elevate WNBA coverage, are stepping back from social media because the noise floor has become unmanageable. Concerns that are legitimate are getting drowned out by reflexive outrage. And that's the broader problem the league is now navigating. The Fever are 2-1. Caitlin Clark is healthy. The team is figuring out chemistry game by game. None of that fits the script certain corners of the internet have already written, so it gets ignored. Let's pull back and look at what this conversation actually reveals about the state of WNBA fandom in 2026. The Indiana Fever played the Dallas Wings on opening night and lost a one-possession shootout, 107-104. By any reasonable basketball standard, that's a competitive loss to a top-tier opponent. Dallas finished last season with 10 wins. This year they're being projected as a playoff team. Paige Bueckers is a generational talent paired with an elite scorer in Arike Ogunbowale. The Fever played them within 3 points on the road in Week 1. That is, in isolation, a fine result. But the reaction online treated it like a franchise collapse. The blame landed instantly on head coach Stephanie White. It landed on general manager Amber Cox. It landed on the roster construction, on the offseason signings, on every decision made before Caitlin Clark ever touched the floor. The team that lost by 3 points to an elite opponent was suddenly the worst-run organization in basketball, according to a vocal segment of its own fan base. Then something interesting happened. The Fever won their next 2 games. They beat the Los Angeles Sparks. They beat the Seattle Storm on Sunday. And the discourse barely moved. The same accounts that were calling for Stephanie White's job after Game 1 didn't post about the consecutive wins. The same accounts demanding roster changes didn't acknowledge that Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and the supporting cast actually figured out how to close 2 straight games. That silence is the diagnosis. Because when winning doesn't satisfy a fan base, it tells you the fan base isn't actually rooting for wins. They're rooting for a story. And the story they want is one where Caitlin Clark is a victim of incompetence around her. Where every loss is somebody else's fault. Where every win is evidence of her single-handedly carrying a broken roster. That story requires losses to confirm it, and it requires wins to be ignored. There's also the Paige Bikers dimension, and we shouldn't pretend it doesn't matter. For over a year, a specific online war played out comparing the 2 players. Their college careers, their draft positioning, their pro ceilings. The investment in declaring Caitlin the superior player became for some an identity. When Paige outperformed Caitlin in their first professional meeting, it didn't just hurt as a basketball outcome. It threatened a position those fans had publicly defended for months. The Crashout, in part, is people protecting their own takes, not the team, their takes. Now consider what this does to the actual people inside the building. Stephanie White is a respected coach who took the Connecticut Sun to the playoffs and was hired specifically because of her experience handling high-pressure environments. Her tactical adjustments are being dismissed by people who couldn't draw up a basic offensive set. Amber Cox built a front office through a methodical roster overhaul that included Sophie Cunningham, DeWanna Bonner, and Natasha Howard. These are veteran moves, calculated moves. They're being treated as malpractice by accounts that posted about basketball for the first time 18 months ago. The screens point that gets raised in this clip is a good example. If your critique is that the Fever aren't setting good enough off-ball screens for Caitlin, that's a real basketball conversation. That's a film breakdown. That's something a coach can address in practice. But that's not the critique being made. The critique is just a name in all caps. Fire Stephanie, fire Amber. With no proposed alternative, no scheme analysis, no understanding of what those roles actually entail. There's a pattern here that extends beyond Indiana. We saw shades of it with the Las Vegas Aces when Aja Wilson's MVP runs were treated as proof other players were overrated. We saw it with Angel Reese when every Sky loss became a referendum on coaching rather than roster reality. The WNBA is being covered, in certain corners, with the emotional volatility of a fantasy football league. Process is ignored. Context is ignored. Anything that doesn't confirm the prior is filtered out. What's happening to the Fever specifically is that they're being held to a standard no team in basketball can meet. Win every game, win by 20, have Caitlin score 40, have every teammate hit every open shot. Anything less is evidence of failure. That's not fandom. That's a hostage situation dressed up as support. And the players notice, coaches notice, front offices notice. When the win against Seattle gets less engagement than a single missed shot, it changes how teams handle media. It changes how players use their platforms. It changes how veterans evaluate Indianapolis as a destination. The behavior of the loudest fans becomes a recruiting issue, whether the league wants to admit it or not. So here's the question worth sitting with. If the Fever go on a 6-game winning streak right now, do the loudest critics of Stephanie White admit they were wrong? Or do they pivot to a new complaint, find a new scapegoat, decide the wins don't count because of strength of schedule? You already know the answer. And once you know the answer, you know exactly what kind of conversation you're really in. Tell me in the comments, are the Fever being analyzed, or are they being used? Is the criticism of Stephanie White based on what's happening on the floor, or based on what was decided about her before the season even started? And if Caitlin Clark herself came out tomorrow and publicly defended her coach and her front office, would the loudest accounts listen? Or would they decide she's being forced to say it? Pick a side, be honest about it. If this kind of breakdown is what you want more of, hit subscribe and stay locked in, because the Fever season is just getting started, and the next 9 months are going to test every single one of these dynamics in real time.